My job is to set the low bar. So hopefully I do a good job of that and convince any of you in the room or watching that it's completely fine to give a talk if you have no clue what you're talking about, which is my goal for today with the Broke Developer's Guide to Hosting Side Projects in the Cloud, a talk given by the always cheap and sometimes broke Mike Bockus. So you might be thinking to yourself, sometimes broke, give me a break. Like I'm sure a lot of you are engineers in here, or you know what our salaries look like. That brings me to my first point. I'm currently unemployed as of the end of June. So sometimes broke is right now, which the always cheap definitely helps out with that whenever your cash flow goes to zero. So that's good, that's good. So the first and probably most important thing I'm going to tell you to do today, anytime you're even thinking about doing anything in the cloud, is to set up budgets and cost alerts. I've kind of put that on the back burner before because I'm like, I'm just going to use the free tier. I'm not going to, I'm just playing around. It's the job of all these cloud providers to make money, and they're not afraid to do sometimes unethical things to make that money. Like I've gone through like different wizards and Azure and AWS, and I'll select the free tier and I'll move on to kind of validate it, and then I'll be like, oh, I forgot to do something, and I'll go back. And they'll change the default tier that I selected back to that kind of medium tier, gonna cost me $500 a month service plan. So literally the first thing you do before you provision any resources when you're working in the cloud is set up budgets and cost alerts, because that's the only thing that's gonna protect you. Definitely been burned by that before. Won't make the same mistake again. All right, so now I'm gonna show you some like different thought processes, examples of what you might consider for your side projects. So another reminder is to keep it simple. Like a lot of the times whenever I'm working on some ridiculous side project, or I'm like, oh, this could be a good idea for something to bring in some extra income, a lot of times I default to kind of the architecture that I've used lately, or the services that I've been using at work or whatever. So they might not necessarily be the right tools for the job, and they're honestly can be very expensive. So take a minute to think about how simple can I make this initially, at least until you kind of flesh out the idea. Can I get by with a static site? And a lot of the times the answer is yes. A lot of times you don't need some fancy API driven site to kind of initially get your information out there. And I'm going to give you one example. So if you don't know, I'm a failed politician, ran in 2022 for House District 41, and I try to be a good steward with anybody who's willing to contribute to my campaign. And one of those examples was with a campaign website. So a lot of times I'll see on like the expenditures of different politicians where they'll throw like 10 grand at a campaign website or 5 grand, and I'm like, that's outrageous. So how do I solve this problem? By doing it myself and rolling a solution that's where I'm able to get my message out there and kind of give me the platform I need to kind of handle email and all that other garbage. And this is kind of the approach I took in Azure. So I've got a front door CDN profile, and that's pointed to my mikeisok.com endpoint. And then I literally just host static resources in a storage account. So there's a bunch of static site generators out there like Hugo and Jekyll and all those, and they work great. Like it's not time consuming at all, and you don't have to do a lot of work. And then you have a site that's up and running. So what does that cost me? That ends up costing the campaign around 50 cents a month. So it's consumption based. It's dirt cheap. And it's worked out great. So I hope when people look at my expenditures, they're like, well, at least he's using my campaign contributions efficiently. So if you're looking to host a static site, there's plenty of options out there that are along these lines for similar hosting. I primarily do my stuff in Azure just because that's what I'm most familiar with, but all of them have similar services. So turns out I'm a liar. So if you are familiar with Azure, you might be looking at this resource diagram and think, he is full of crap. Like, what do you mean you're getting a front door profile for 53 cents. That's because I am a liar. That's a classic service that they provided. So, of course, Microsoft is working on removing that resource and kind of deprecating it. But there's always going to be an option. It's just, like I said, their job is to make money, and they can't make a lot of money if I'm consuming their hardware for 50 cents a month. I am lying to you, but there are good options out there still for hosting those services. But right now, if I did the same website, Microsoft would probably be forcing me to pay like $35 a month for that front door profile. But there are cheaper options like Azure Static Apps and stuff that's like $9 a month. So, all right. Next thing, think outside the box. Especially when you're working on a side project, it's kind of fun to like learn new tools, use them in ways that you wouldn't use in a professional setting, or to kind of abuse things based on the type of problem that you're trying to solve. And one of those things was with a problem that my son came to me with, and he had this little like LED board that he wanted to make it so his friends could go to a website and like draw on the board, and it would display in his room. So that was the problem he came to me with, was, I have this little LED board and I want to make it to where it's connected to the web. And I was like, well, crap, I don't want, traffic coming directly into our home network. So, how do I work with you to kind of, based on your skill set, how do I let you solve this problem for the cheapest amount of money possible? So we kind of went down that road, and I was kind of teaching him about the cloud and what his kind of issues he was going to have, and kind of how networking works, because my main goal in life is to create myself a bunch of little minions that then support my cash flow and kind of help me live, and don't so that's the main goal. So it's working out great so far. So far it's working out great. He's a total nerd, and it's been awesome, and he's like, I want his job. And now that I'm unemployed, he's like, maybe not. Maybe I'll try something else. But this is what we came up with. So I was like, there's these free app service plans that you can use for like hobbies or when you're getting started out. And then I didn't want to teach him about like everything about how to store data and make it super complicated. So the easiest route to go was with Azure Table Storage, because it was just like, he kind of knew what a JavaScript object was, so he kind of knew about JSON, and I was like, that's all it is. You're just like storing that data in this table, and then you're pulling it out with these requests, and he was kind of run from there. So the whole cost of this project is just the table storage account for 3 cents. So, I knew it was just his friends, so I didn't have to worry about, like everyone in the world, decorating his sign and creating this huge cost for us. So yeah, his friends messing with his sign cost 3 cents a month. So that was a win. And this is the end result. So, the right is his sign in his room that he kind of leaves above his computer. And I told him to draw a picture, and this is the most G-rated picture I've ever seen on that sign. I don't know if any of you have 16-year-old boys, but it's just like, I'm like, Mira's my 10-year-old. I'm like, you're not allowed to go in his room. I don't know what will be on the board. But it worked flawlessly, and he learned a lot in the process, so it was great. Also, don't be afraid to take the handouts. So every cloud provider wants to get their hooks in you to like make sure that, if your business does take off or your side project does take off, that they're going to make money on that. So they will throw money at you to kind of get your idea going. You don't even have to be funded. You can just be like, I got this idea, man. And they're like, cool, here's a few grand. So take advantage, I've tried to take advantage of all of these. I have a few left, like, I'm not a fan of like IBM or, some of the other cloud providers, but almost every provider has a like startup program that you can take advantage of to get a bunch of free cash thrown at you, a bunch of free credits. And then you can kind of play around and learn new stuff and try to build something that'll kind of help you build your skill set. So definitely take these handouts. Those are all links. If you get this slide deck afterwards, that kind of take you out to those, or just Google, cloud provider startup program, and you'll find what you need to find. And last, thanks. I mentioned that I'm unemployed. That QR code is my LinkedIn profile. So please, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please reach out. The one on the right is my donation QR code. So if you'd love to help out my poor political campaign, that one will do it. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.